What's up? It is Melissa T, the Procrastination Bully, with an offer for you. I am announcing a winter sale for the Getting the Win gear store. If you're someone, you've seen our shirts, you like the gear, you like what we're saying, hashtag get on that, hashtag luxury item, all the good things. If you're familiar with these catchphrases and you love them, they resonate with you, go to gettingthewingear.com. I've got a new winter collection that has launched. And I've got some new items there as well. Not just the winter collection, but a few other new items as well. So if you're someone who's navigated a trauma or transition, or if you're just somebody that's looking to beat procrastination in your own life and you want the clothing with the message to remind you that you are a winner and a go-getter, head over to gettingthewingear.com for all your swag. Use the code WINTER for 20% off your order. That's the code WINTER at checkout. Good evening. Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal-getters, and welcome to the Getting the Win show. I'm your host, Melissa T, the Procrastination Bully. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. If this is your first time catching the show, welcome. Our mission with this show is to help first-time women authors who've navigated a trauma or transition find healing through writing and publishing their first book. So we talk about all things authorship as well as all things personal development. Because as you heard, I'm the procrastination bully. So I'm about bullying the procrastination that's in you, not bullying you yourself. You're beautiful. You're awesome. Thank you for being here. And in today's episode, I'm speaking to something that is a form of procrastination, which is perfectionism. If you're a recovering perfectionist like me, or if you're still full-blown perfectionist, this episode is for you. So lock in for the next 30 to 40 minutes, okay? This episode is for you because I want to help you, if you're someone who is an aspiring author, to push past the perfectionism, to move the needle on your book, okay? So in this episode, I'm going to share a few stats just to paint a very clear picture of what perfectionism, how perfectionism impacts us as people, and especially as women, because I researched this from the perspective of women, because we experience it very differently than men do, given cultural conditioning that we experience, not only here in the United States, but globally. So I want to paint the clear picture for you first, because we wear it like it's a badge of honor, and to a certain extent, it can be until it's not. Right? Like there is a time when perfectionism is a superpower until it isn't. So let me paint this clear picture for you. In terms of creativity, now this applies to those of us who were working on our books and we reach that point where we get stuck because we want to get the thing right the first time. We don't like wasting time, right? If you're a perfectionist like me, you don't like making mistakes. Mistakes are annoying. They feel like a time waster. However, the interesting thing is making mistakes is actually a part of the process. It actually improves your learning as you go through it. So let me share some of these statistics, starting with authorship and creativity. All right. Up to 25% of women identify as high perfectionists. Recovering perfectionists here. So if that's you, put that's me in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, put that's me. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. Women perfectionists are significantly more prone to procrastination and chronic delays in their writing due to that fear of imperfection. Because again, we want to get it right the first time. There's creative paralysis, and I can speak to this by experience. We just wrapped up the 4-week book boot camp, and some of our participants struggled with that, even in the foundation step and in the book building step where we build out the word web, we brainstorm all the ideas that are going to go into the book and then turn that into an outline. As simple as that concept may sound just in hearing, the idea of moving those ideas from head to page can be nerve-wracking for someone who's a perfectionist, because we as perfectionists, we're editing ourselves every step of the way, even in a process that is meant to simply be free-flowing brainstorming. We're editing ourselves from start to finish. And that part, that self-editing, is what eats up our time and slows the needle that we're trying to move forward. Okay, so we run into creative paralysis sometimes, like, Let me tweak this. Let me tweak this. Let me tweak this. Can I give you an example? So when I was in Jamaica back in December of 2024, and I got the humongous download from God for what ultimately has become the Pain to Prose playbook. When I first started writing that, because I did get into the book, like the content creation part of that process, I was in that pillar, like I was writing already, and got the revelation to pivot it and make the book more about authorship than just productivity. I won't lie to you, I hit a wall. I didn't touch the book for several weeks. I had a May 31st deadline for that rough draft. And the rough draft I showed everybody was the productivity version of that. We're in late October as of this recording. I've now pivoted, but I did hit a pause there. Like I didn't touch it for a while, because here's one thing about us perfectionists that doesn't get touched on very often, but I'm going to validate for you here if you're a perfectionist and you're watching this. When we do something, because of the fact that we are self-editing from start to finish, it uses up a lot of our energy. We use up a lot of brain, a lot of mental bandwidth when we're doing stuff. So if we then realize that we make a mistake or that we have to change something, we already know how long that process is going to take because we know how much of a perfectionist we are. And that causes us to procrastinate. We're like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go through that again. You know what I mean? So that is a perfect example of creative paralysis. I did pick the book back up because accountability is one of the biggest force multipliers for those of us who are perfectionists and recovering procrastinators. When you've publicly declared that you're going to do something and you've set a deadline for when it's going to be completed, the folks you told you were going to do it are looking out for it. And the last thing we ever want to do is to let anyone down that we've told something. When we make promises to ourselves, we give ourselves a pass. But when we told other people that we're going to do something, we don't want to have egg on our face. Shout out to the vegans. Maybe not egg, maybe something else. Maybe oat milk or something. But like, we don't want to come out looking bad like we broke our promise to them. Even though the thing we made our promise about has to do with us, the thing is we've shared our promise with them and they're looking out for it, especially if the person or people we've shared this commitment to are also our ideal avatars. And in my case, this particular book, I have people who are my ideal readers that are looking out for it. So I had to pick it back up. There was no choice in the matter, especially because I applied the use of it during my Spring Forward Writers Retreat, like similar to the hair growth ads back in the early 90s. Like, you know, I'm not only promoting this product, but I'm also a client kind of thing. Like the Spring Forward Writers Retreat wasn't only to help the attendees who were there, it was for me too. I was working on the book during the retreat as well. The 4-week boot camp, it was during the boot camp that I pivoted. So it wasn't just for the participants that were in the boot camp, it was for me too. So I was sharing my progress with the ladies that were in the boot camp as well. So it is incumbent upon me to make sure I finish this thing. And I've been talking about it on this show, which you've been watching on a regular basis. So it is incumbent upon me to make sure I keep my commitment to you, especially given my area of expertise, right? But imagine that in terms of creative paralysis. This is a byproduct of perfectionism. Talking about that delay that I was talking about, creative paralysis. You're like, okay, never mind. I want to do this right. I'm not in the right headspace right now. I'm going to put it down. The issue is, though, we don't often assign ourselves a date for when to pick it back up. So if you've been following the show for a while, I did mention this in the previous episode in which I mentioned a cheat code, which is, yes, by all means, utilize the power of the pause. That's very important because there are times when you're dealing with your responsibilities to your family, your responsibilities on your job, if you're a corporate employee, if you're a W-2 employee, your responsibilities to your business, if you're an entrepreneur or you have a side hustle, your academic responsibilities if you're in school, your community responsibilities if you're active in your community, whether as a volunteer or in a faith-based organization such as a church or a mosque or a temple, that sort of thing. You may have community responsibilities. So all of those may be crowding on you and crowding out your creative process. So if you do need to pause, I'm not vilifying that at all. By all means, utilize that. However, the cheat code is tell yourself when you're going to unpause. Give yourself a time frame. Are you waiting 48 hours? Are you waiting 72 hours? Are you giving yourself a week? Are you giving yourself a month? Like, give yourself a specific time frame. And when it comes to moving the needle on your book, if you're a first-time author, no more than 2 weeks. And I learned this from Brendon Burchard. Brendon Burchard is a coach to high performers, like gold medal Olympic athletes, heads of state, high performers. And he says, if you're choosing who to marry or changing jobs, outside of that, nothing should take you more than 2 weeks to decide on. And even with those two, the choosing your next job and choosing whether or not to marry somebody, the max window, he says, is 2 weeks. So even if you're in your creative process for your book, don't give yourself more than 2 weeks. Don't make the mistake I made. Okay? And this is not a hypocrisy thing, to do as I say, not as I do. I'm sharing my process with you transparently and showing you my areas of growth as well. Because while I did pause for those few weeks, I made up for it with the 4-week book boot camp, which fulfilled the promise that I shared with the authors that participated. My whole thing for them was to simplify the process and make it faster. What I discovered during the book boot camp is exactly this, though, the creative paralysis, which then unfortunately caused our authors to not have a completed manuscript by the end of 30 days. They were juggling a lot of other things. And my ladies, they are perfectionists. So let me go back into these statistics for you. So now I'm heading into workplace performance. If you're somebody that's a W-2, or even in your business, if you're somebody that has a business and maybe you have a team, 33% of women report high perfectionism in their professional roles versus only 21% of men. Okay. 50% of women managers report regular self-doubt about their performance versus just 31% of men. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this goes back to the cultural conditioning that we're dealt, whether in US culture or in other cultures. Like, patriarchal societies are a thing. Don't worry, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm simply stating the facts of the matter. We live in a patriarchal society. So men are favored in certain ways, in ways that women are not. And so there's a big economic difference. And in the workplace, there's a different priority in terms of mobility within a company. That's just the truth of it. And here's a statistic that'll prove it to you. Women apply for promotions only when they feel they meet 100% of the qualifications, whereas men at 60%. If they feel they're 60% ready, they're asking for the promotion. That goes back to the privilege I'm talking about. That's just a fact of society. Women are only applying for them promotions when they feel that they have dotted every I and crossed every T and put a curl on every G and J. We're not making that move until we know for sure that we qualify and can defend ourselves and prove why we deserve the new role. Men are like, I just want it and I know I can fulfill it. So I'm going to apply. Women, on the other hand, we want it. We know we're worthy of it, but we then must also prove why we're worthy of it. So this is examples of feeding into why we as women can become perfectionists, but also why we tend to hesitate and procrastinate with that perfectionism. Okay. So here's what I want to say as a counter to that statistic. I'm not saying to ever apply, qualify for something when you're only at 60%. Do your thing at 100%. Never be any less than that, whether you're a man or a woman listening to this. Do your thing at 100% every time. But don't let that stop you from applying for your qualifications. Because here's the part of the perfectionism that is a superpower. And this is something I quoted in my book, my Pain to Pros playbook. Because you're a perfectionist, your good enough truly is good enough. I learned this from my coach, L. David Harris, which was amazing. And he is absolutely right. He's a perfectionist as well. Your 100%, your good enough is indeed good enough. Because again, you've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, curled all the G's and J's. You've done way more than anybody else around you. Not only more than they're willing to do, but more than they've thought of doing. You've done more research. You've double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked. So your good enough truly is good enough. You're fueled by self-doubt if you're anything like me. And please put it in the comments if that's something that you struggle with. That, you know what, is this good enough? No, I need to do some more. I need to double check this again. I need to continue sharpening the saw. If that's you, put that's me in the comments. Sharpening the saw forever and ever. And while Abraham Lincoln did say he would spend the first portion of his time, if he needs to cut a tree, sharpening the saw, you do at some point have to pick up the saw and whack at the tree. Can we agree on that? Like at some point you do need to get to the actual task of whacking away at the tree. Okay. So a few more statistics for you. Okay. 60% of perfectionists experience professional burnout from overwork and stress. Bookmark this because I will have a guest on the show where we discuss burnout in detail. Her name is Dawn Stone. She's known as the Conflict Chick. She recently launched a book and a community to that end that teaches recovering from burnout. So if that's your transition that you've navigated, by all means, make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe or follow on Spotify so you can catch this if you're an audiophile. That interview is bound to provide value in your life and cause some breakthroughs. Okay. We will definitely talk about burnout. And if you've been following me for a while, you've heard my journey with burnout. Okay. So I get it. 60% of perfectionists experience professional burnout from overwork and stress. Perfectionists are more likely to miss deadlines, procrastinate, and suffer from low productivity despite high effort. So imagine the frustration that you would feel. And let me know if this is you, if you've experienced this. I know I have. Recovering procrastinator here. My perfectionism has caused me to miss a deadline before. It has caused me to procrastinate many times. Can I be honest with you? In setting up the show, not just this episode, any episode, my setup is very simple. It doesn't involve a lot of tools or tech gadgets, but I am tweaking each of the gadgets for like 10 minutes at a time, simply because I want to make sure the shot is great. I want to make sure the makeup is did. You know what I mean? I want to make sure I look good, and I want to make sure that you guys hear me loud and clear. And this is the beauty of making sure you have enough time to do what you're doing. But absolutely, perfectionism will cause you to procrastinate. It is indeed a form of procrastination. In terms of the professional burnout, let me share a quick story on that. So I worked in the news media industry for 9 years. If you've been following me on the show, you've heard me talk about this. And I will always beat that drum because I learned so many important lessons that I needed to learn from those 9 years of experience. There was a lot of growth I needed to do. And those 9 years were my incubator. And then these 2 years that have since followed, I've experienced accelerated growth because I'm in a different environment. But one of the things I noticed in the 9 years was that I was starting to become exhausted by year like 5. I was noticing the exhaustion. And more often, I was broaching the idea of getting a replacement, of having somebody replace me. Because I was an editor in all 3 definitions. The person who oversaw a team of content creators. That's one definition. That's the publishing definition of an editor in the media. I was the grammar person. I was the copy editor. So I cleaned up all of our content, the web content and the social media stuff. I was responsible for cleaning all of that up before it went out. So that's the grammatical definition of an editor. And then, since I had a film background, I edited all of our videos. So that's the technical definition of an editor. I was doing all of that. I was doing the job of like 4 or 5 different people. And I was also going out in the field and doing interviews. Because I was someone that did not have any other full-time employment, I had a lot more time. I was far more flexible. And I was willing to cover topics that several of our contributors were not willing to cover, namely politics. A lot of the folks on our team were not interested in covering that. So I did that. Like, I did the lion's share of that. If the governor was going somewhere or talking somewhere, we were there. I held the microphone in his face. If there was a political event, somebody is campaigning nationally, whether for president or something like that, and they made a tour stop in Florida, I was there. But I reached a point by year 5 where I started broaching that subject of finding a replacement. And my boss, the founder, I was his right hand. He wasn't really feeling that. Like, he wanted to make sure that I stayed. He had his reasons. Obviously, I'm his most versatile team member. Like, he wanted to make sure, that the business kept going. No shade to him. From a pragmatic standpoint, that made sense. By year 7, the stress that I was experiencing on that job had compounded and was starting to manifest into physical symptoms. I was experiencing panic attacks, emotional breakdowns, and my mom was the one that pointed out the fact that I was showing signs of depression, which that never crossed my mind, which was wild. So I was showing signs of depression. And then I began to do what folks like me who are grounds crew, who are great number 2s, but we don't say much. Instead of raising a fuss, I simply withdrew. I did less, which for someone who's a perfectionist, that is illogical. We don't function like that. We operate in excellence in everything. So the fact that I was withdrawing because I was so exhausted, I knew the clock was winding down. I didn't know how I was going to say no or that I had enough. Like, that wasn't in my vocabulary at the time. I didn't have the language for it. But I knew my time was winding down. And so did God. By his hand, through my mom, God bless mom, he found an opportunity for me to relocate to Atlanta. The Lord knew the only way this was going to stop was for me to change locations. And that is what happened. I had to leave in order for things to change. But I had experienced all of the stages of burnout, all of them, including the full withdrawal to the point where I'd become numb and stopped feeling emotions, which for someone like me who's highly sensitive, that's scary. It's one thing to be sensitive and be told, like, get over it, or you need to manage your emotions better, all the things, right? It's one thing to go from that to feeling nothing. That's scary. So I was definitely among the 60% of perfectionists who experience professional burnout. And in my own life, I'm not necessarily advising this for you. It may not be wise for you, But in my own life, it took a physical relocation for me to overcome the burnout. I had to leave the environment altogether. And it took 1 whole month of straight up rest for me to recalibrate. Just catching up on sleep. That alone made all the difference in the world because I was able to think more clearly again. I was reintroduced to myself again. Who is Melissa? What does she enjoy doing? What does she want to learn? What are her goals? What is her vision for the future? I had forgotten all of these things over the course of 9 years. Melissa Thomas had morphed into a brand, Afro included, which that's great if you're remaining attached to a company. But physically relocating, I had to relearn who I was apart from a brand, apart from somebody else's company. I had to create my own brand. And in order to do that, I had to relearn who I was. So in these last 2 years, I experienced that exponential growth. So planting the seed for you in terms of if you're experiencing that burnout as a perfectionist, maybe not physical relocation, but perhaps physically moving your body temporarily. In previous episodes, I've talked about the power of a 10-minute walk, especially if you're a W-2 worker, you work in an office or something, and them people get on your last nerve. Sometimes that 10-minute walk can make all the difference in the world, right? Maybe you're somebody that will take a coffee break when you're about to explode. The coffee break is enough for you, right? Maybe just the physical moving of your body to go get the cup, refill it, and just experience the satisfaction of drinking down the coffee, or just the distraction of drinking down the coffee. Because can I be real? I'm not a coffee drinker, but can we agree that office coffee can be kind of whack? Like, just as an aside, office coffee can be kind of terrible. But anyway, the break is the point. Make sure to take your break if you're experiencing that sense of burnout. And by all means, the one thing I was lacking during those 9 years is a safe space. So if you've been rocking with this show for a long period of time, you hear me beat that drum very often, and I will always beat that drum. Have at least one person as a safe space that you can release to, that you can share your frustrations with, your doubts, your misgivings, all the things, because your one person can sharpen you and give you an additional perspective. That way you don't end up deluding yourself and telling yourself that you're alone. Because the truth is you never are. There's always at least one person available to you. Even if you don't reach out to them, the truth is you still have at least one person available to you. Even if it's not somebody in your physical vicinity, there is at least one person perhaps online, perhaps a like-minded person on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, whoever, somebody that you can reach out to directly and say, hey, I got this going on. Can I run it by you or whatever? You know what I mean? Somebody that you can reach out to and express yourself. So if you're somebody that's a recovering perfectionist, here's that next cheat code. Have your one person. Have a who. If you've been following the show, you always hear me say that. Have a who. Have somebody in your corner that you can release to talk about the thing that you're being perfectionistic about. If it's your book, tell them what those things are that you're seeing as imperfections, because they can give you the perspective and say, wait, like, why are you worried about that? Keep going. Like, no, don't worry about that. Nobody's going to notice that. You notice it. Nobody else will. I promise you. Nobody else will. And I get it, because as a recovering perfectionist, what do we always say? We say, if I can see it, they can see it, right? But here's the truth of what I said. Remember what I said earlier. Your 100% is truly good enough because you saw the things nobody else thought of. They didn't see it. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. And this is especially true if you're in the writing process of your book. I need you to hear me, hear me, hear me. If you're in the writing process of your book, you've done your word web, you've done your outline, you've done your story inventory, and you're now in the process of applying words to the page. And maybe you're hesitant to type or hesitant to voice record because you're like, which story should I start with? Or, as is the case of one of my ladies in the book boot camp, I started on one story and then kind of went down a rabbit hole into another story that might not be a good fit for this chapter. Here's what I told her. Keep going. You're in the writing phase. This is a first draft. It's not your only draft. It's only the first. Keep going. Get the content on the page. And once you get to me, because I'll be your editor, once you get to me, we can go through line by line and talk through which stories are a better fit where. That's my job as an editor. Don't block yourself while you're getting your story out onto the page because the world is still waiting on your story. And if it's not on the page, there's nothing for me to edit. So keep going. If you're struggling with that, get everything out of your head and onto the page. Even if you do end up going down a rabbit hole, down 5 different tangents, building a whole highway, that's okay. Build the highway on the page. By all means, please do that. Because then that gives me as the editor even more rich stuff to work with. Because here's the beautiful thing. And this is the thing I love seeing the light bulb come on for authors with. Here's the beautiful thing. The truth of the matter is, no matter what your story is, given the richness of your life experience, you likely have more than one book in you. And that same writer that I'm talking about, who was worried about going down too many rabbit holes as she was telling her stories, that's the conclusion we came to this very week during our work session on Tuesday. She said, I have to remind myself that this is the first one. And I said, exactly. That's the beautiful conclusion you just came to. This is your first book. It doesn't have to be your last. So if you're a perfectionist, you're in the process of writing a book, or you're in the process of exploring the idea of writing a book, let me just tell you, you very likely have more than one book in you. And that's exciting. That's super exciting because that gives you even more space to play. And that's the alternate perspective. So this is cheat code number 3 that I want you to incorporate. If you're someone that's a perfectionist, choose to approach anything you're doing from a place of play. Because when you're playing, you make mistakes all the time. Think about your childhood. When you were playing around in childhood, did you ever bump your head? Did you ever stub your toe? Did you ever stumble and hit the floor? Did you ever face plant? If that's you, put face plant in the comments. Did you learn to ride a bike? I'm someone that had learned to ride my bike. By the grace of God, my dad and my brother, they helped me learn to ride my bike. And I can promise you, I injured myself several times as a child in the process of riding my bike. In one particular instance, we were living in Georgia, in Lithonia. So we lived in an apartment complex. By this point in our time in Lithonia, I was finally off the training wheels because I first learned to ride a bike in Lithonia. Okay. But by this point, the training wheels were now off. I was riding a regular bike at this point. And I was riding around in the parking lot right where our apartment building is. And y'all, like, not only did I face plant, because I lost control, I was trying to ride the bike from the parking lot onto a curb so I can then ride on the sidewalk. But the transition to get up on the curb caused me to stumble. Not only did I fall off my bike and cut my arm, like I ended up with a scar on my arm as a result of that. Not only did I fall off the bike and cut my arm, I landed in a red ant hill. Okay. If you're familiar with red ants, them things burn. Like they are a terror. Okay. So huge mistake. But even then, even as a perfectionist then, I was 9 years old. Do you think that stopped me from riding my bike again? No, not at all. Because the beautiful thing about riding the bike, and this goes back to my point about turning something into play, my favorite thing about riding a bike was the ability to travel. Technically, a bicycle is a vehicle, right? And I love the idea of being able to wander and explore the whole apartment complex on the bike. It was no longer just about exploring the different play areas on foot that I could reach. On a bike, I could see so much more of our environment, of our surroundings. I could meet more people. I could find more playgrounds across the apartment complex. There was more to discover. So use that as a way to shift your perspective if you're someone who is a perfectionist. View your experience, whether it's working on your book, working on your business, whatever your hashtag luxury item is. View it from the perspective of play. Because when you're playing, you allow yourself the space to make mistakes. You allow yourself the space to iterate. Like, okay, well, I tried this approach. Let me see what happens if I do it like this. You'll be surprised at what you discover the more you iterate. And that's literally how our minds work. We sharpen, we continue to refine. And this cheat code goes back to the second one I talked about, which is having a who, because talking to somebody also allows you to iterate. They're going to share with you their perspective, which allows you to reiterate and change your perspective. Like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, have you considered that maybe you're saying this and it might be a problem, but have you considered that maybe nobody else is worried about that? Or have you considered that maybe their higher priority is this other thing and not this one thing that you're worried about? That's very possible. We are still in the month of October, which is self-improvement month. Okay. So we're talking about self-image. 80% of perfectionists report persistent negative self-talk and self-criticism despite success. I'm going to run that back. 80% of perfectionists report persistent negative self-talk and self-criticism despite success. Can I tell you, that was my biggest struggle for over a decade. I had some of the most toxic self-talk out there. And if you followed the show for a while, you've heard my story about the letter I wrote to 7-year-old Melissa. That letter was what freed me, because in my letter, I made a commitment to 7-year-old Melissa that I would end that abuse. I acknowledged it for what it was. The toxic self-talk was abuse. So I made a commitment to her that I would protect her for the rest of my life, which includes not using toxic self-talk. So anytime I catch it, I literally switch it and rephrase it to something else. Previously, my self-talk involved a lot of negative I am statements. Here's the way to correct that. If you're somebody who's a perfectionist, you make a mistake and you instantly say, man, I'm such an idiot. Here's a thing that you can use. Now, obviously, you know I'm someone who's of the Christian faith. So in our faith, God calls himself I am. And we are made in his likeness and image. And I personally believe you are as well. You don't have to be a Christian to believe that. But I personally believe you are a reflection of God's brilliance and his creative genius. He imprinted his brilliance on you. So if he says I am, and he's perfect, talking about perfectionists, right? If he's perfect, then it doesn't make sense to say, I am such an idiot. Someone who is perfect is not an idiot. So I would say, I would rephrase something like that to say, man, that was a bad decision. Or man, I didn't think carefully. I didn't think that through carefully. Instead of characterizing myself in the mistake, I simply point out the mistake. I objectify the mistake because a mistake can be fixed. When you characterize yourself negatively, is who you are. It's really hard to change that. A mistake, though, can be remedied. You can bring in another who to help you remedy a mistake. When it's you, that's hard. You have to go really deep and do a lot more work to correct that. Okay? Plus, when it's you, it's internal. When you point out something objectively, it's outside of you, so you can see it and make corrective action. Here are a couple of other things in terms of self-image and mental health with perfectionism that I want you to consider, okay? Perfectionism is a strong predictor of anxiety, depression, and eating disorders in women. Especially if you grow up in these United States where thinness is worshipped, you already know how that goes. In a UK study, 1 in 4 girls ages 7 to 10 felt pressured to be perfect in appearance and in life. This goes back to a previous episode where I shared a global pandemic of low self-esteem. 85% of people experience low self-esteem. 85% of people. And perfectionism is a huge factor in that. Huge factor. So let's talk about college. If you're somebody that's academic, 45% of college students say perfectionism negatively affected academic performance due to avoidance and anxiety. Socially prescribed perfectionism, meaning trying to meet others' expectations, which is one of the biggest factors in perfectionism. What will other people say, right? What will other people think, right? Socially prescribed perfectionism has risen by over 30% globally in recent decades, going back to that big global statistic of 85% of people having low self-esteem. Okay. So listen to those statistics that I mentioned. 45% of college students, they're perfectionists, but it adversely affected their academic performance. It caused them to have avoidance and anxiety. So that begs the question, is perfectionism really the superpower we think it is? Perhaps not. Remember what I said about the 80% of perfectionists. They report persistent negative self-talk and self-criticism despite success. So remember what I said at the beginning, perfectionism is a superpower until it's not. And here's why it becomes a non-superpower after a while. Shout out to Mustafa Ghonim and the Extreme Execution Flight Assessment with this. Over-reliance on a strength creates a limitation. When we rely too much on something that is a superpower, we create our own limitation. So as much as we want to self-edit the whole way from start to finish, we end up manufacturing our own limitation. We end up creating problems for ourselves. So if in that academic setting, we want to be excellent on those tests, on those papers, but if we over rely on that perfectionism, we create anxiety within ourselves and the negative self-talk and self-criticism despite success. Then we want to avoid the thing because it's too much stress, which leads to procrastination. So let's reiterate these cheat codes on how to overcome the perfectionism or how to better leverage it in your life, how to utilize it to the max in your life without creating limitations. 1, give yourself a deadline if you're going to delay something. If your sense of perfectionism causes you to pause, by all means do, but give yourself a window for how long that pause is going to be. And make sure that window is no more than 2 weeks. No more than that. With me, I'm saying give yourself 48 hours. If you have a mind that's all over the place, you're a social butterfly, you forget stuff easily, fine. 72 hours, 3 days. But definitely no more than 2 weeks on anything. Okay, so that's number one. Give your delay a deadline. That's number one. Number two, have a who. Have somebody to release to, somebody to share your perfectionistic perspective with so that they can sharpen you and give you the perspective you need to move the needle forward. They can talk you off the ledge, either because they're a fellow perfectionist like you and will understand you and can say, I feel you on this one, but hold on. Like, as a perfectionist, I know why you're focusing on that, but hold on, reel that in. Or they might not be a perfectionist at all and be like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. So I don't think you need to either. Okay. So that's number two, have yourself a who. And then number three, approach what you're working on, your luxury item, your book, whatever that is, approach it from a perspective of play, because then you're less hard on yourself. Your perspective is less rigid. You're willing to make more mistakes. You're willing to iterate. You're willing to sharpen. You're willing to learn and grow if you view it as play. Think about how we treat kids. We encourage kids to play because that's one of the fastest ways for them to grow. Okay? So from now on, view whatever you're working on as play, as you should. To be honest with you, play is one of the signs of our genius as human beings. It's actually one of our signs of genius. So play. With this book that you're working on, play. Like, fully brain dump your stuff. Don't worry if you're going into multiple stories. Don't worry if you're building out an entire highway that you're then going to have to later fix. Let me help you as the editor fix it. For now, get it all on the page. Let's move the needle. Let's help you move past this particular procrastination pause. Okay. Hopefully this episode was beneficial for you. If it was, again, subscribe on YouTube if you're catching this on YouTube at Getting the Win. You can follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, the Threads at Getting the Win Show. I am also on TikTok at Melissa T. Writes, and I am on Spotify. Just look for the Getting the Win Show on Spotify if you're more of an audiophile, okay? But in the meantime and between time, make sure you have a great and productive rest of your Wednesday and a great and productive rest of your week. And come right back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern for another value-packed episode of the Getting the Win Show. I've been your host, Melissa T., the Procrastination Bully. Take care, and I love you. Peace.